Hello, everyone in the St. Anthony's math community. Here we are with Unit 8, Lesson 1, Transformations of Functions. Now, last year in geometry, you learned that you can transform any shape, any type of figure. This year in Algebra 2, you can actually do the same thing. We're going to transform functions this year instead of shapes, okay? So there's a few things we want to talk about. We want to talk about our parent functions. These are the functions that are going to be transformed. And this year, the main four that we're going to talk about. Now, this does not mean that these are the only four functions that can be transformed. I can actually transform pretty much any function, but the four that we're going to focus on this year are the identity function, which is f of x equals x. That's our linear function. So this is just a linear function. And what does this look like? I have a slope of 1 over 1. Okay. Arrows pointing in each direction. Now, because of that, I have a domain of all real numbers. We've kind of spoken about domain a little bit. Domain only has issues realistically when you have a denominator, that was unit 3, a radical, unit 4, or a radical in the denominator, that's a combination of the two. And your range, you have an arrow pointing down, an arrow pointing up. Your range is all real numbers. Okay. We have our square function. Now, you guys know the square function as a quadratic function. Okay, that's y equals x squared. 0 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. That looks like it's all that's going to fit on this one. And then, of course, negative 1 times negative 1 is also 1. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Here's what our function looks like for this one. Okay. Now, if you look, this one's a little bit different in terms of the range, but we'll get to that in a minute. If you look, it goes back to what I said before, where I don't have any fractions. I don't have any radicals. So my domain is all real numbers. That doesn't change. The range on this one does not have an arrow pointing down. It only has arrows pointing up. I do have a lowest point. That lowest point is 0. But now I can be 0. So the way that I say the range on this one is, now you get the range, y is greater than or equal to 0. You can get that just from looking at the picture itself, okay? We don't have to worry about finding these algebraically. These are just functions that I'm giving them to you. Make yourself familiar with them. We have our absolute value function. Now, you've definitely seen this in Algebra 1. We haven't done it too much this year, but the absolute value function looks like a giant V. So we have this. We have this. There's no fraction. There's no radical. My domain is all real numbers. But similar to the quadratic function, the square function, there is a lowest point. That lowest point's over here. So because of that, we say that the range is y is greater than or equal to 0 again. Okay. Now the square root function, okay, the square root function, if you remember from unit 5, you can't really take the square root of a negative. So the first number that I can take the square root of is 0. Square root of 1 is 1, 2 I don't know, 3 I don't know, square root of 4 is 2. It looks like that's all that's going to fit here. So this is what our function looks like there. Now, remember what I talked about. You have a domain restriction anytime you have a fraction, I don't, or radical. Now, when you have a radical, we're going to get more into this next year in pre-calculus, but basically you take the inside and set that greater than or equal to 0. So for now, just know that the domain is x is greater than or equal to 0, and we'll explore that in a later math. But our range, we can kind of see from the other two that we've done, that's also y is greater than 0. So these 4 pictures here, ladies and gentlemen, just become familiar with the basics of them, okay? Now, before I go on any further, I do want to just point out, and this is something I'm really sorry about. If you look, there's a few things that are not on yours. Hopefully, The updated file got posted to your Google Classroom. So you do have this f of x plus c and f of x minus c there. But if not, just take a few minutes to take a look at that. We have vertical shifts. Now, vertical shifts are shifts up and down, okay? These are up and down. That's what vertical is, right? Okay. Vertical shifts happen in the same direction. So that's going to be important. Write that down, same direction. What do I mean by that? F of x plus c. So if I'm adding something, I'm getting more. This is going to move up c units, okay? F of x minus c, I'm subtracting something, so I'm getting smaller. This is going to move down c units, okay? Now, again, I'm going to point this out because it's something that is important. This is not really new this year. I used to teach Algebra 1. I know this is covered in Algebra 1 a little bit, and it's also done in geometry too. I used to teach that one too. So if I take the function f of x equals x, and I change it to f of x plus 3, what did I do with that? Well, I took my linear function, and I shifted it 3 units up, plus 3, up 3. Okay, so let's practice some of these now. If I have y equals x, after transformation, it becomes y equals x plus 7. That is going to be a shift. Because of the plus, it's going to move up. And then it's going to be 7 because that's what I have. If I took x squared and it became x squared plus 5, again, that's a shift. Because of the plus, it's up. And then however many units, 5. Y equals absolute value of x. Y equals absolute value of x minus 3. I took the absolute value of x and I shifted it. Because of the minus, this time it's down. And it's down 3. Same thing over here. Here's a minus sign, so this is a shift of down 2. Okay? Well, this year, you're asked to do things both ways. I can give you the function and ask you to describe the shift or describe the transformation, or I can give you a transformation and I can ask you to write the equation. If I ask for y equals x, 4 units down is going to be minus. Okay? So this is going to be x minus 4. It goes in the same direction for these. Y equals x squared, 6 units up. That's going to change to x squared plus 6. Y equals absolute value of x, and I want it 2 units up. Y equals absolute value of x plus 2. 2 units up, same direction. How about 3 units down on absolute value of x? That's not absolute value of x, that's the square root of x, I'm so sorry. Well, be careful. Make sure you don't extend that square root symbol too far. It ends right over the x. This minus 3 goes on the outside. It is important because it does come up later. Okay, there's a different type of transformation. Now, I do want to point out, I don't really like the graphs of 5 and 6. They don't really fit. So we're going to do the graphs of 7 and 8. Now, when I do these, I'm a big fan of drawing the parent function. Remember, the parent function is just the original function. Draw the parent function as a dotted line or dashed line. If you get familiar with those basic functions and the way that they look, the rest of this is very easy because it really is just moving points themselves individually. So the basic function here is y equals absolute value of x has a dotted line that's here. Okay. Now, what did I do to this one? The graph of number 7, I shifted up 2 units. So every point, 1, 2, gets moved up 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Oops, that's not 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And once you have enough, once you have a few, you can go ahead and draw your graph in. Now let's think about it. Did I change my domain at all? No. I moved it up and down. That has no effect on left to right. So my domain is still all real numbers. My range, however, which was y is greater than or equal to 0, now got shifted up 2. So instead of y is greater than or equal to 0, this is going to be y is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, so just keep that in mind for us. And then let's take a look at this one. I've got the absolute, the square root of x. Square root of x is the one that looks like this. Remember, once you get more familiar with these, you'll see these will be very quick for you. And then this is the graph of number 8. So now that I have that, this one got shifted 3 units down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Here's my new graph. Okay. My domain, I shifted down. So again, I did not affect my domain. This is going to stay x is greater than or equal to 0. My range, I did change. I moved it down 3. So it was y is greater than or equal to 0, but now it's going to be y is greater than or equal to -3. So just keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, okay? These are our vertical shifts. Vertical shifts do not affect the domain at all. They only affect our range. But then I do have horizontal shifts. These are the sideways shifts. But like before, I told you that vertical shifts happen in the same direction. These ones happen on the opposite direction. Okay? So these ones go in the opposite direction. Make sure you write that down, because this is where it does get a little confusing. You know, some of them are exactly the same. Others, you know, they are slightly different. So this one here, f of x plus b. Well, when the transformation, when the shift happens on the inside of parentheses, and when we talk about the inside of parentheses, we're talking about the inside of parentheses, the inside of the absolute value brackets, the inside of the square root symbol. All of those transformations are going to be the opposite direction. So f of x plus b is actually going to move to the left b units. Okay? And f of x minus b is going to move to the right. So these ones are different. These ones don't follow those same rules. If I had the absolute value of x and I make it the absolute value of x minus 3 all on the inside, this takes that function and it shifts it 3 units to the right. So just keep that in mind. It is the opposite, okay? This one here goes in the opposite direction, okay? So same thing as before. Let's practice a few of these. Absolute value of x became absolute value of x minus 5. This is going to be a shift of right because it's the opposite. Five. Y equals x squared. Y equals x minus 2 squared. So if you look, there's now parentheses. Those parentheses means that this is going to move in the opposite direction that you would think. Shift to the right 2 units. But now, you're not going to get just one transformation, unfortunately. You might get 2 or 3, or sometimes even 4 transformations that are taking place. If we look at this one, there's two transformations that are happening. The first thing happens on the inside. There's first going to be a shift of left 3 units. These ones are the opposite. But then there's this -5. That happens in the same direction. So this is a shift of down 5 units. Okay, so be aware that you can have multiple transformations at the same time. I have y equals a square root of x. I've got something on the inside. That one's going to be the opposite. That will be a shift. So let's see here, it's -3. That's going to be shifting right 3 units. Okay, so the inside of those, that's going to be the opposite. Over here on the outside of the square root symbol, you know what? Let me get rid of those just to make sure you can really see it. Right there, this one happens in the same direction. So that one's going to be a shift. It's +4, so that's going to be up 4, okay? If it's on the inside, it's the opposite direction. If it's on the outside, it is the same direction. And now we do the same thing. Let's practice writing some of our own. Y equals x squared, and I want to move it 3 units left. Now this one, when you're taking x squared and you're moving it left or right, you have to put parentheses. Left is going to be the opposite. Don't forget about that. Okay, so I'm going to put +3, and then I still have to put the squared symbol. So don't forget that squared symbol, okay, everyone? So shift down 6. This one's going to be the same. Shifting right 2, that one's going to be the opposite. And I'm doing all of this to y equals absolute value of x. So do your, take care of this one first. Okay, take care of the 2 units right first. When we do that, we'll get y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. Now take care of the other one. Down 6 is -6. Okay? Let's take a look at 7. Same type of function. I have down. This is going to be the same direction. I have right. This one's going to be the opposite direction. And which one am I going to do first? I'm going to take care of the left-right ones first. Okay? So what we have here is y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. I want 3 units down, -3. See if you guys can do this last one by yourself. I'm going to do this one quietly. Just keep in mind this is that x squared one, so you do need parentheses if there's a left-right shift, which there is. So hopefully you guys were able to get x plus 4 all in parentheses squared plus 3. Now, just like before, we are going to graph these last two. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the parent function. So number 7 was the absolute value of x. Absolute value of x is the one that looks like this. Okay. Now I shifted this 3 units down and also 2 units to the right. So every single point is going to go 3 units down, 2 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And you'll have another one here, here, here. Here's our new function, okay? So I did not change left and right in terms of domain. If it started as all real numbers, guys and girls, get this into your heads from now, it will always be all real numbers. The only time you need to worry about the domain changing for this topic, for this unit, this year, I should say, is the square root function, okay? If it's all real numbers, it's always gonna be all real numbers for the domain. So that's not gonna change here. This is still all real numbers. In terms of the range, if I was y is greater than or equal to 0, but now I shifted it down 3, this is going to be y is greater than or equal to -3. Okay, so 3 units down, I did that. 2 units right, I did that. Fantastic. Let's take x squared now. What does x squared look like? 0 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared. And that also looks the same over here. That looks not too good over there. There we go. Okay. What did I do to this one? This one shifted 3 units up, 4 units left. So 3 units up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Good. This one's right there. Okay, so again, just like I said before, your domain is all real numbers. That will not change. All real numbers. That is not going to change just because you moved it left or right. You have no fraction, you have no radical, so it's still not going to affect it at all. Your range, however, it was y is greater than or equal to 0. Now I shifted up 4 though, or I shifted up 3, excuse me, so this is going to be y is greater than or equal to 3. So hopefully this helped you stay on top of your work. Remember, these are not used in case you don't want to pay attention in class. These are for helping. If you miss something in class, you can kind of slow it down and watch the same part over and over again. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll be back soon with another one, okay? Bye, everyone.